I'm standing on the Mount of Olives.
Now, just over my shoulder is the Garden of Gethsemane.
This gate is now known as the Lion's Gate.
The place where the disciples had the Last Supper with Jesus.
I'm standing at the Jordan River, basically the road of sorrow, the Via Dolorosa.
The man they'd given everything up in order to follow was laid into a tomb.
That journey starts right here.
Oh man, how are you guys doing this morning? It's good. It is good to be with you. My name's Dave. I'm one of the pastors here. And listen, when you take the book and you open it up, the first words that you read are probably words that you've heard before. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What if that's true? Like what if it's true? What are the implications of that? Because here's how I see it. Like, if that's not true, then we're just kind of chaotically hurling through space on this big rock. There's not a lot of purpose to it. It was all kind of maybe happened on accident. There was a big bang. There was just things kind of happening, and who knows who's in control. But if it's true, then it has implications, because there's a designer, there's a creator, there's a God who created this place. And not only did he create this place, he created it on purpose, with a purpose. There's something he's trying to do. And not only does this creator God create something on purpose, we realize very quickly we're not him. It's not my universe. It's not my world. It's his, and I kind of exist in it. And so if that little phrase, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, if that's true, then it has huge implications. I was at Custer State Park. Our family went out there, and I was on a trail run because Shawn tricked me into running the marathon and last year. And so I was out there training, and there was just this little snack that you take for energy while you're running. And there was a plastic wrapper. And when I was done eating the snack, I don't know what happened to me, but there was like this little devil that popped up on my shoulder, and it was like, dude, you're up here, there's nobody for miles. You're in like remote country. You could just kind of throw I know, isn't that horrible? I'm a pastor, and that came to my mind. Well, I wouldn't have told you the story if I got it wrong. So I actually put it in my pocket, but let me tell you why I put it in my pocket. I didn't put it in my pocket and not litter because I thought, oh man, what if I get fined for this? Or, I should follow the rules. That wasn't it. It was just that I had been so blown away by the creation of God as I'm running on this trail. We'd seen bison, we'd seen mountains, we'd seen rivers. And you're just kind of aware that there was a creator, and I'm not him, and I owe him glory, and I exist in his world, and I don't want to mess it up. It's so beautiful, right? And all of that because I just kind of believe that it's true. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and there's a purpose to all of it, a creator. You flip over one page to chapter 2 in the book, and you see that not only is there a purpose and that God created the heavens and the earth, but he created you and me as well. He created us. And if that's true, if God created us, then we have a value. It actually says in the scriptures that there's the imago Dei, the image of God, that he created us in his image, that we're kind of the pinnacle of creation, that we reflect the creator more than anything else. And so we have this value, kind of like the creator of a painting, like Picasso. Like if you had a Picasso painting, that's gonna be worth a lot of money. It's not because the paint is special. Just like any other paint. It's not like the canvas that it's on is all that special. It's because Picasso is the one that painted it. That's what makes it so valuable. It's interesting, the Apostle Paul refers to us in the New Testament as God's masterpiece. Like we were created, and we're not some random clump of cells. We're not just put together on accident. You're not an accident. God created you, and you have value. And your value doesn't come, listen to the good news of this, my value now doesn't come because of my achievements. My value doesn't come based on my looks. Like, praise God for that, right? I mean, goodness, the older I get, you look in the mirror and like, wow, gravity is a thing, okay? It just is. So praise God for that, because isn't it exhausting when you're walking around trying to figure out, man, my value is going to be based on my looks, or my value is going to be based on my accomplishments, or my value is going to be based on my 401k? No, God just says, listen, you're infinitely valuable because I created you. What if that's true and you really believe that? That's just the first 2 chapters. You flip it over again. This idea that God, this divine author, is weaving this story together. This story where there's a protagonist and an antagonist appears, this bad guy who's kind of influencing these characters in the story to do the wrong thing, to rebel against this God. And then when they do, sin and evil and sickness and death and all these things enter into the world, and this fall happens. And I don't know about you, but if that's true, it's wonderful news, because I have been tempted from time to time when bad things are happening in this world to sort of want to look up and shake my fist at God and go, God, why would you create a world with cancer? God, why would you create a world with war? Why would you create a world with tornadoes? Why would you create a world like this? But if I read the story and believe it's true, it's kind of like God would look back at me and go, buddy, I didn't. Like, read the story. I created this perfect world. Look at the story. And if that's true, and it's really mankind that kind of came in and kind of the fall and that sort of thing, if that's true, then I can trust God. In fact, I think God would look and say, no, look at the story. Even in chapter 3, you see the emergence of this hero, right? That's going to come and it's going to stomp on the head of the serpent, the heel on the head of the serpent. Like, God is already foreshadowing his son, Jesus, this person that's going to come and redeem the world and start to bring order back from the chaos and redeem all things and make all things new. And I think God's looking at me, and maybe you as well, and going, listen, if you would just believe this, like it is true, then you can trust me. And all that bad stuff and all that evil and all those things that tempt you to want to shake your fist at God and be mad at God, those are actually things that ought to be making us yearn and run to God and say, God, how am I ever going to get through this without you? We look at God and if we believe those things, we say, oh God, you're the one that I put my faith in. You're the one from which my help comes from. You're the one that I can trust and that I can count on, because if it's really true, then that's the story that's being woven. And I can trust that at the end, I'll see that you are weaving all things together for the good of those that love you. What if that's true? And that's just the first 3 chapters. And what if it's true that God wasn't just sort of this divine author weaving the story through history as someone who's like mediocre at it? What if he's not a God who is moving the story forward with beads of sweat coming down his forehead and sort of white knuckles on the controls of the universe and go, gosh, I hope this turns out okay? What if he's really good at it? What if he's super skillful? What if he's godlike when it comes to running the universe? So much so that he always does things in the perfect way. He always does things at the perfect time. God's timing is perfect. Now, you probably know the importance of timing with things. I mean, if you ever try to work on your golf swing, right? The timing of it is really important. If you've ever tried to learn an instrument or play with other instruments in a band or an orchestra, and like somebody starts to speed up the timing or somebody comes in too early, you know the timing can just mess things up. If you're a farmer, you want to get the seeds in the ground at just the right time. If you're an investor, you want to time your investments in just the right way so that you get the greatest return. Timing can be something really, really important. It's interesting to me that in Galatians 4:4 and 5, it says, when the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive full rights as sons. And we would add, and daughters. That phrase there, when the time had fully come, when the author saw and had taken the story to the place where it was the perfect time, he sent his Son, Jesus. Now, the Greek word there for time is chronos. It's where we get our word chronology. There's another word for time in the Greek called kairos, and I'll get to that in a second. But chronos is this idea that time is linear, that time is, kind of plays out the way you're familiar with the concept of time. It's 2 o'clock, then it's 3 o'clock, then it's 4 o'clock. It's October 10th, then it's October 11th, and so on and so forth. And what this verse is saying is, at just the right chronology, God sent his Son, Jesus. And we see that. You look at Daniel 9, it was predicted that when a decree to rebuild Jerusalem happened, it would be 483 years after that the Messiah would come. This is a prophecy that happened hundreds of years before Jesus was born. And sure enough, if even non-Christian historians would tell you that a guy came along named Cyrus, he was a world leader, he decreed, hey, I want to rebuild Jerusalem. And it was 480-ish years later that Jesus was crucified on the cross. The prophecy just lines up. In fact, that's not the only place where it happens. Depending on who you talk to, certain scholars, some will say it's about 300 prophecies in the Old Testament. Some will say 320 or maybe even 340 prophecies in the Old Testament. These prophecies that were written 700 years before Jesus, 400 years, 300 years. All of these prophecies, and that Jesus fulfills them all hundreds of years later. And you think, you're skeptical, like I'm skeptical. You go, well, let me tell you why that's true. You talk about, what if it's true? Let me tell you why that's true. Because Jesus got up, was born, he was a Jewish boy, he went and read all those prophecies, and then just kind of made sure that he guided his life to do all of those prophecies and fulfill all those prophecies. But if you look at the prophecies themselves, what you see are things that are completely outside of his control. Things like where he was born. Things like how he would die, things that other people did to him, and yet Jesus fulfilled all those prophecies. Now, just for fun, there was a mathematician who tried to study the probability that someone's life would fulfill all of those 300 and some odd prophecies, and he got started with one. And he thought, what's the probability of that? And then he got on to number 2 and number 3, and he starts adding this up. When he gets to 8 of the prophecies, what he determines is that I just can't keep going because it's impossible. Like, once you get to 8, he said the probability that one person would fulfill in their life all of just 8 of the prophecies from hundreds of years before is 1 to the 1,017th power. That's 1 with 1,017 zeros after it. Just for fun, you want to wrap your mind around it a little bit more. If you were to take half dollars, like little coins, and put that many of them on Texas, they would fill up Texas 2 feet deep. If you were to take a little marker and put an X on one of them, like a little Sharpie, and then hide randomly that one silver dollar, silver half dollar, whatever, and you ask somebody, go ahead and pick some place that you can parachute in, and somebody would parachute in, then you blindfolded them and said, you can walk in any direction, you get one shot, bend down, and pick up the one with the X on it. The odds of that person picking up the right one are the odds of one person fulfilling just 8 of the prophecies, and Jesus fulfilled over 300. You see, God's timing, the way that he put it together, the way that he's weaving the story, testifies to how great he is at it, testifies to the fact that it really is something you can believe. It is true. And not only the chronos of time, but the kairos of time. You say, well, what is that? The kairos of time is this concept that that the stage is set. It's just right. The environment is just right. It's like if you were going to propose, you don't do it at McDonald's, you know? Or you want to get it just right. I remember when I proposed to Rachel, I wanted to get it just right. We were in college. I wrote a song that at the end said, "Will you marry me?" And I wrote this song. And then I called this guy that was coming in, and he was going to do a concert. And I was going to get us in the background like choir for this concert. In the middle of the concert, I was going to come out and I was going to be like, "Hold on, Rach. Go ahead and have a seat." And I was going to grab, somebody would throw me my guitar. And I'd start singing my guitar, singing this song. And I was going to do it. It was going to be perfect. It was going to be kairos. It was going to be amazing. The guy called me the night before. He goes, "Hey, we decided we're not going to let you up on stage." What am I going to do? Like, I got a diamond ring in my pocket. I don't know what to do. We'd go on dates after that. I'm nervous all the time. I don't know what's going to happen. Finally, one night, we had this conversation that just seemed special. It seemed kind of, very romantic. And so I'm like, on the way back to our dorm, and I get back to the dorm, and I'm like, this is it, man. This is the night. This is it. This is the kairos moment that I'm going to propose. So I ran up, and I got my guitar that I hadn't been practicing the song for weeks. And so I sat her down, and I started playing the song. I forgot all the words. So then I was planning to propose through a song. So I was like, I don't know the words of the song. So I'm going to say stuff. To which I was like, it was horrible. And finally I just reached in my pocket and I'm like this. And for the grace of God, she just had pity on me and was like, "Oh my gosh, come here, man. Yes, I'll say yes to you." Did I mention it was Halloween night? Like, that's the worst, I apologize in front of everyone. It's the worst proposal ever. It was not a kairos moment. God had a kairos moment. When Jesus came in, understand this, the Greeks had been, for the first time ever, the Greeks had just kind of taken over the world. And they'd brought their culture with them, their art, their music, their literature. The Greek language became super popular. It was the most specific, concise, language. And so all these people that spoke, this tribal language and this tribal language and this nation over here, everybody kind of learned Greek as their second language so they could all speak together. So when Jesus came, everybody was kind of speaking Greek. That's one thing. Second thing I'd share with you is that the Romans, if you study, remember the Roman roads? Did you study this in world history? And how the Roman roads were this huge kind of innovation because for the first time now you could get goods and services from this part to this part, and it made commerce, it kind of shrunk the world a little bit in preparation for all of these things that the gospel could spread quickly through a common language, through common roads. And do you know what else? Religiously, God had been drilling into the Israelite people, the Hebrew people, for hundreds of years now. Hey, I'm the creator God. There is one God. I'm not an idol. I have expectations called the law. You're not going to meet those expectations, so there's going to need to be a sacrifice. That's the Messiah. And that's kind of the thing that he was drilling into the Jewish people for years and years and years and years. And by the time Jesus comes on the scene, the Jewish people had been persecuted so many times and scattered so many times that there were not just Jews in Jerusalem, but there were Jews in almost every area of the world. And for decades, then they've been sort of sharing that story. Hey, we believe there's a God. He has expectations. We're not going to meet those expectations, so we need a Messiah. Now, why do I say all that? Can I just put it together for you a little bit? In Acts 9, Philip, one of the early church leaders, comes upon an Ethiopian, an African, and they come together and he leads him to Christ. The church, the kingdom, the good news begins to spread. Do you know what? Do you know where they found each other? On a Roman road. Do you know what this Hebrew man and this African man, how they were able to communicate? Because they both spoke Greek. And do you know what that African man was reading? He was studying the Hebrew scriptures and asking the question, where's this Messiah from? It's a kairos moment. Like God is moving all things, preparing all things so that when Jesus comes, the gospel can spread like wildfire. And you just see his hand weaving everything together. The problem is that from our perspective, we don't always see all the pieces coming together. It's like when I came early on in our marriage, I walked up on Rachel. We didn't have any money. And so Rachel would make things as gifts for people. And she was doing a cross stitch. And I kind of came up on this cross stitch and I'm looking and she's doing the thing like this. And it wasn't good. It wasn't. I'm just telling you, like what I looked at was not good. There were like these pieces sticking out over here and these random like threads sticking out over here. And like there was like a little brown clump of them over here, but then like, whoo, it just like the brown stitch went way over here. And like I could not tell what it was. And I thought maybe you need some lessons. I don't know. But before I was able to open my dumb mouth and say something, she turned it over. And that's when I saw an incredible, beautiful cross stitch. Some of you, if you know what I'm talking about, cross stitch or Afghans or whatever, it's like from one side, you see just this random, threads are all over the place. You can't really tell what's going on. But then when you flip it over, you see how it all comes together. And I'm just saying, like that's one of the things that I struggle with when it comes to, is all this stuff true that we talk about in the Bible? Is because I have a limited perspective. God was weaving this whole story together to the perfect time that Jesus comes on the scene. And the people of his day, they had that same limited perspective. They didn't quite understand when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, that moment would set into motion the most amazing, significant week in human history, the Passion Week, that would culminate with the single most important moment in the entire story, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. We asked Shawn to take us back to that moment of Jesus riding the donkey into Jerusalem. Check it out.
I'm standing on the Mount of Olives. It's a beautiful setting, sitting some 2,600 feet above sea level. It gives you this beautiful panoramic view of the entire old city of Jerusalem. This is a significant site. You could argue one of the most significant as Jesus enters the last week of his life here on earth. There aren't a lot of events that all 4 eyewitness accounts talk about in all 4 Gospels. It's what we now call the triumphal entry. But it didn't just start here. Jesus did most of his ministry around the Sea of Galilee, about 2-hour drive north of here. But Jesus has made his way down south. It's Passover time, and as all Jews did at the time, they made this pilgrimage journey to the city of Jerusalem. And Jesus' disciples, they made that same journey on foot, would have taken them a couple of days. And so Jesus was about 2 miles to the east of here in this little town called Bethany. And while he was there, he gave his disciples some instructions, and he sent 2 of his disciples out. We don't know which 2. Likely it was Peter and John. And they went out to get Jesus a colt and also a donkey. Now that would have been very significant for them at the moment because Jesus had always walked everywhere he went. So the thought that he would ride a donkey into the city of Jerusalem, now that was a significant thing. Now Jesus gave them something to say if somebody were to ask, why he was asking for this donkey. And he was just given the instruction to say, just tell them that the Lord needs this donkey. Now you could take that in a couple ways. Lord back in the ancient world could just refer to the owner of the donkey, but that's likely not what's going on here because Jesus didn't own this little colt. Instead, Lord was most likely a reference to who he was. He's Lord, he's Master, he was one with great authority. And if you think about Jesus, he had grown in such popularity through his ministry. Through his teaching, through his miracles, crowds had gathered around him. He had actually just raised Lazarus from the dead, and that rumor was spreading all throughout. I mean, could he really be the one? And so people were really excited, and so if somebody were to ask, who's this donkey for? And they say, it's for the Lord. Somebody would willingly lend this donkey to allow Jesus as Lord to ride this donkey into the city. But not only was it just a practical mode of transportation, it actually was fulfilling an ancient prophecy, biblical prophecy, to incredible precision. Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, written some 500 years before Jesus was coming to the Mount of Olives, it says this. It says, see, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, a foal of a donkey. It's interesting that it was the colt and also as the mom donkey. Likely, very practically, it was because Jesus was going to ride this colt that had never been ridden before. And this young little colt, if it was accompanied by its mom, would be less likely to get it spooked when they went through these massive crowds of people that would have been full of anticipation and exhilaration. This Palestinian peasant, this itinerant preacher and teacher, is starting to look more and more like a king. And Jesus mounts up on this donkey on the Mount of Olives as he's about to enter into the city of Jerusalem. And what we discover is he's exactly who the prophets predicted him to be. But as we'll discover, he was not who the people expected him to be. Now it was Passover. And what that meant is if you were a Jewish person, no matter where you lived, you would make your pilgrimage to Jerusalem. That's where you would celebrate Passover. And so people came by the hundreds, if not by the thousands, to celebrate Passover here. And they came with such excitement, such religious fervor, because God had promised some thousands of years ago that he would send a Messiah, one who would deliver, one who would save his people. And so there was all kinds of excitement that maybe, just maybe, Jesus could be the long-awaited Messiah. And so there's so much anticipation, so much fervor, so much excitement as they see him riding this donkey into the city. Because they were expecting it to not just be a donkey, they were expecting it to be a war horse. You got to understand that just behind me, the building that's now called the Dome of the Rock, that stands on what was the Temple Mount. The temple was this amazing, amazing structure, and it was understood to be the epicenter of God's activity in the world. I mean, it was the political center for the Jewish people. It was also the religious center for everything that was happening. And so Jesus, seen as this political leader, would have come over the Mount of Olives, descending his way to the temple. And the people were thinking, maybe, just maybe, Jesus is the long-awaited Messiah. And so with such great anticipation and such great fervor, they lined from the top of the Mount of Olives all the way down to the city gates. People were lined some 3 or 4 people deep. They were welcoming him as king into the city. They would have been, waving palm branches, putting clothes on the ground. They were saying things like, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna literally means save us, like God save us. And when they're saying that, they're literally saying it, God save us politically. You see, back in the ancient world, the Jewish people weren't free people. Instead, the Romans had conquered them some few hundred years before, so they lived under great oppression. And so the thought that Jesus might be this incredible political leader that would deliver them from the hands of the Romans brought more excitement than they knew what to do with. And so they followed Jesus all the way down to the city of Jerusalem to welcome him as their king. This is where Jesus did something surprising. The Mount of Olives is now in front of me, and what you would have expected of Jesus when he came off the Mount of Olives, you would have expected him to go to the south side of the city. But instead, he came to the eastern wall through this gate. This gate is now known as the Lion's Gate, but it's been known by a few other names. For a while, it was known as Stephen's Gate because Stephen, the very first martyr of the Christian faith, tradition holds that he was stoned just outside of this gate. But back in Jesus' day, it was actually known by a third name. This was called the Sheep's Gate. Now, the significance of the Sheep's Gate is during Passover season, which again, this was Passover, people would have brought their spotless, unblemished lamb through this gate. It was the place that you would make a sacrifice for the sins of people. Now, Jesus was definitely a victorious king, but what's fascinating about this moment is he's making a statement that his victory was not going to come in a way that you would expect. His victory would come through sacrifice. And though he was certainly victorious, Jesus was not gloating in his victory. You see, Jesus had no doubt won over the popularity of people, but he had not yet won over their hearts. Because he knew that this same crowd that was shouting, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," would be the very same crowd that would yell, "Crucify him," just 5 days from now. And so actually, just when he passed through this gate, what the Bible records is this. It says that Jesus wept. He wept over the city of Jerusalem. You lead into the connotation of what's written in the original language, it actually means that he deeply sobbed. He was overwhelmed with emotion, just sadness for the people, because he knew he didn't have their hearts, and he prayed for peace. Not just any peace. He prayed for a shalom type of peace. Sometimes when you and I think about peace, what we think about is the absence of conflict. You and I could have tension with one another, and we could choose to not do anything bad to one another, and that would be the absence of conflict. But the type of peace that Jesus prayed for is a shalom type of peace, a sense of wholeness. Because the truth is, if we just don't do anything bad together, I can still have anger, bitterness, rage, frustration in my heart. There's nothing peaceful about my existence. But a shalom type of peace, it brings healing to my heart. It restores things. It renews things. I could truly live at peace. That's the type of peace that Jesus came to bring. That you and I might live with that kind of peace in our relationship with God. We might live with that type of peace in our relationship with others. I mean, what if it's true? I mean, what if this wasn't just a single amazing moment in human history as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords came down the Mount of Olives on a colt? I mean, what if? What if victory came through sacrifice in this king? And what if he came to bring peace so that you and I could be made right with God and made right with one another? What if? What if we made King Jesus the king of our lives today?
Yeah. You see, I think the danger in hearing these stories and reading these verses year after year after year is that there can be a tendency to write them off as sort of fables or things that didn't really happen, but they've got nice principles for us or lessons for us to learn. They're more allegory or myth or legend. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciated about being able to go over and walk those streets and see those gates is that I realized that this is not fable or allegory, this is history. This is truth. This is God weaving a story, weaving true things throughout history. And so it's true, therefore it changes everything for you and for me. And my prayer is that as we walk this journey together over the next few weeks and bring Israel to you, Jerusalem to you over these weeks, that it will become more real to you as well. Because here's what's true. Our Creator God loved us so much that while we were still sinners, in fact, Romans 5:6 says, you see, at just the right time, kairos, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly, for us. Jesus, who is both fully God and fully man, died on a cross. And 3 days later, he rose again, and that's true. And in rising again, he extends an invitation to you and to me And to say that if you will come and follow me and put your faith in me, then your sins can be forgiven and you can overcome sin and death as well and live with God forever. That's the good news, and it's true, and it's for you. And if it's true, then everything changes. There's no bad thing that happens in your life that can't be redeemed, that can't draw meaning from. You can't see that God will eventually, and it takes faith sometimes, it takes faith a lot, but eventually that God is working all things together for the good of those that love Him. And the invitation for you today is to trust Him as if it's all true.